Welcome to this video. Today I want to do a follow-up video to a previous video that I created. It was titled 10 Steps to Speed Up Your Computer, where I go over different tips and things that you can do to help optimize your computer, help it run more efficiently, and help speed it up. Now in this follow-up video, or the second video, I want to go over some additional points or things that you can do to help, again, optimize your computer, as well as a discussion about some of the other tips that have been suggested. Please note that I will list all of these talking points down below in the notes with timestamps, so if you do want to skip ahead, you do have that option. Now the first point I do want to make sure is completely clear. Make sure that you remove the anti-malware programs that I recommended in the first video upon completion. You do not want to leave those installed. We do not want to add to the clutter. We want to clean out the computer, and we don't accomplish that by adding more programs. So again, those programs are very good for removing malware, but once you have completed that step, you need to remove and completely uninstall those anti-malware programs. Point number 2, some people have suggested or recommended that disabling your antivirus program can help optimize and speed up your computer. It is true that an antivirus program can take a hit to your CPU and RAM resources, because it can be, depending on what it's doing and depending on which antivirus you're using, it can be a bit of a resource hog. However, generally speaking, I don't recommend disabling your antivirus, and we'll talk about some alternative options that I do recommend. But you also have to understand that if your computer is running slow because of the drive, for example, if you have a hard drive or an old drive, disabling your antivirus is not going to change that. It's still going to be slow. If your computer is running slow because of the lack of CPU or the lack of RAM, then yes, disabling your antivirus program will quite possibly improve performance. But again, generally speaking, I do not recommend that. Now, because I like to give options and freedom of choice with a lot of the things that I go over and recommend, I did recently publish a video on the channel about how to disable Windows Defender if you choose to go that route. Again, that's up to you, but the video is there to help you in case you want to go that direction, as well as if you have a different antivirus program, you can uninstall it if you choose to do so. Now, let me be clear. I do believe that the best antivirus on the planet is you, the user, but the average user is not educated enough to know the full do's and don'ts of the internet or computer use in general. And so I don't believe that the user in general is a reliable antivirus, though it has the potential of being the best antivirus. So the general or most common computer user needs an antivirus to accompany and help them. And yes, antivirus programs can definitely be circumvented. They are not foolproof. They do not protect 100%, but they can help. And so any performance boost that you get from disabling your antivirus, I don't think is worth it to compromise the security of the computer. Here are some alternatives that I would recommend. Rather than disabling your antivirus, try switching to a different antivirus and see if it runs better on your computer. Not all antivirus programs run the same. Not all antivirus programs take up the same CPU or RAM usage. So you may need to try several different antivirus programs to see which ones run the best, but that would be one of the first things that I would recommend. Also, as I mentioned in the previous video or the first video, you can look at upgrading the hardware in your computer. Now, this will depend on the computer that you have as to what upgrades are available, but most computers do at least give you the ability to upgrade the RAM. Upgrading your CPU may be more difficult, especially if you have a laptop. That may not even be an option, but that will depend on your specific computer. But I would recommend looking at upgrading the hardware before I would recommend disabling the antivirus. Another thing I talked about in the previous video was consider switching to Linux. Now, Linux often runs lighter on the computer than Windows does. In addition, you don't need to run an antivirus program, and so whether or not you can switch to Linux is going to depend on what you use your computer for. If you're mostly just in the web browser, browsing the web, checking your email, doing stuff in the browser, all of that can be done on Linux. And often applications that are not available on Linux that are available on Windows, you can also or often find an alternative to that program or app that is available on Linux so that you can switch. I did recently post a video on my channel how to install Linux on your computer if you decide to go that route. But again, if you're having performance issues, I would strongly recommend considering switching to Linux, especially if all you use the computer for is browsing the web or doing stuff in the web browser. Now for point number 3, people will often come to me and ask when they're dealing with a slow computer, will it help if I go through and delete all my garbage files like photos and all these extra text documents and all that stuff? Generally speaking, no. Those files don't generally have anything to do with the overall speed of your computer, though there is one caveat or exception where it might make a difference, and that is when you're dealing with a drive that is reaching its maximum capacity, it will begin to slow down. Once you pass that about 85% threshold of a drive's maximum capacity, the drive again begins to slow down as far as how quickly it loads files and other. Now you have to recognize that in order to make a significant drop as to how much space you're using, you would have to delete a lot of photos and a lot of text files. Now, maybe you're that one person who does have, many gigs of photos and other documents, so that could be a real situation out there. But generally speaking, the things that take up the most space are going to be programs, as well as possibly maybe videos or other large files such as those. But again, you're not going to see this huge boost in performance if you go through and delete all these photos out of your computer. That just is not how it works. But again, keep in mind that you do want to avoid maxing out your drives, because again, you will notice a drop in performance as you reach your maximum capacity. Now with that in mind, that's exactly why I did not focus on CCleaner in that previous video, because while it is good to clean out all of those garbage documents and to keep your computer clean, none of that is going to really benefit or result in a large jump in performance, because those garbage files don't really have any impact on the computer's performance. Now for point number 4, there are some power settings that you can look at as far as boosting the performance on your computer. Now don't think of this as putting your computer in overdrive. It's not like you're going to change these settings and then all of a sudden have this massive boost in performance. It's not like that at all. It will depend on what it is that you're doing with your computer, and this is generally targeted or focused at laptop users. But what you can do is go to the bottom right corner of your screen and click on the battery icon, and you'll notice that there is a little bar there that you can adjust as far as changing the settings to benefit battery life or better for performance. So again, this isn't like putting your computer in overdrive, and there are additional power settings that you can look at, and it will depend on what it is that you're actually doing with your computer, whether or not you even notice a difference. But I do just want to make sure that people know that this is an option and that it is available. Now just a quick recap of the main points, or the 4 points that I wanted to go over in this video. Number 1, remove the anti-malware programs once you have finished using them. Number 2, generally speaking, I do not recommend that you disable your antivirus, but I do recommend considering switching to a different antivirus program, or consider switching to Linux. Number 3, deleting your files such as photos and junk folders, generally speaking, will not impact the performance of your computer whatsoever, but you do want to keep in mind that you do not want to max out the capacity of your drives, because as you do that, the drives will slow down. And then point number 4, you do have options with the power settings as far as performance versus battery life that you can look at, especially if you use a laptop. That's everything for this video. If you have any comments, questions, or additional recommendations, or anything you want to say, post them down below in the notes. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.